Quiet on the set, Kathy. Damn it.
Oh, I think she gave you a finger.
Bitch. BNFFLN. Week 13. Take uno.
Yeah. 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 Don't get it twisted. This rap shit is mine, motherfucker. Fucking fuck what you heard. It's what you hearing. It's what you hearing. It's what you hearing. It's what you hearing. Fuck.
Welcome in to this week's edition of the Boys Night Fantasy Football League Network, or the BNFFLN, as we like to say here in the studio. Across from me, as always, is co-host Bob.
Shalom.
And I, of course, am Weave. And this is your Week 13 edition of Stardom Situm. All right. Let's just get right to it.
Mm-hmm.
Up first, we have the quarterback position. So, Bob, before you get a drink of that beer there,
I saw you
reaching.
You were moving, so I was like, I gotta get
That's
ready.
because we're going to be quick this week, guys.
That's right.
Real quick. So, the quarterback position. Who do you got?
We're gonna go with Phillip Rivers this week.
Versus the Cleveland Browns.
The Cleveland Browns don't have a great defense, and Phillip Rivers is coming off a week where he carved up that Dallas defense on Thanksgiving. Yep, carved him up. Went 27 for 33 for 434 yards and 3 tutties.
It's a big day.
I think he's going to keep the good times rolling this week against Cleveland.
Yeah, Phillip Rivers and the Chargers in general had a quiet start to the season, but as you mentioned, they're now heating up at just the right time. He has a nice matchup this week against the Browns, who are awful, as usual. And while Cleveland has been pretty solid against the run, their pass defense has a lot to be desired. So look for Rivers to thrive with both the deep ball as well as those short to intermediate throws where the receivers can do quite a bit of work against a weak secondary. And for that, we're going to say start him. Moving on to our quarterback sit of the week. We had a tough decision here, but ultimately we decided to sit Matty Ice Ryan versus the Minnesota Vikings.
Sorry, Matt Ryan.
Yeah, it happens. Matt Ryan is coming off a solid performance last week, a game that saw the Falcons firing on all cylinders with both facets of that offense. Atlanta has begun to look more like the Super Bowl contenders of last year, but Bob and Weave, we're not convinced.
Not yet.
We still think that they haven't quite turned that corner, and so neither should you. Ryan has struggled to put up back-to-back high-end performances, and with a tough matchup waiting for him, I don't really like his odds this week.
Yeah, you think of Matt Ryan last year, he would come in and win you weeks last year. He hasn't had that type of production this year, and I think this, it could, I don't want to call it a trap game, but, because, he's coming off a good game, but he's coming up against the Minnesota Vikings, so I don't like that matchup. I think the Minnesota Vikings will cause him a lot of trouble this week, so that's why we say sit him.
Moving on, because we're going quick, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick. That's why we're drinking all this extra beer here.
Got to get all my sips in.
That's right, fluids. But speaking of fluid, running backs. How are we going to connect those two? Well, I'll tell you why. Who's your start of the week?
Start of the week is going to be Jordan Howard,
who is very fluid on the field, and we're hoping, especially this week, against the San Francisco 49ers defense.
Yeah, the Bears coming in from this past week, terrible game, combined, for, a yard. That's really, really bad. I was trying to think of like a comparison.
There really isn't.
There really isn't. It's just really,
Here's
really
your
bad.
comparison. I sat at home. You sat at home on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Guess what? We only had 1 yard less than a professional football team.
Yes.
There's your comparison.
That makes me feel good about myself. Thank you, Bears, for making me feel good about myself. And while I sit on a couch, watch you play professional football and make millions of dollars. Anyways, okay, Jordan Howard. I think the Bears are going to they're going to get back to that ground and pound mentality. And with the San Francisco defense being terrible, I like the Jordan Howard's production this week.
Yeah, John Fox had mentioned a huge workload potentially coming his way to reestablish the run and the focal point of this Chicago Bears offense. Jay Cutler, had to mention him. There he is. But be ready for Howard to get back on track and churn up yard after yard against a banged-up 49ers defense that ranks towards the bottom of the league. And that is why we are going to say,
Start him.
Moving on to our sit of the week at the running back position, we have Latavius, doesn't have a nickname, Murray.
We're working on it, guys.
At the Atlanta Falcons. So Latavius Murray has been the better back out of the Vikings backfield for the past month or so. But if you take a closer look at the total touches between him and McKinnon, his fellow backfield mate, it's actually fairly even. So while I still like Murray, and I could see him having a good game, or at least modest game, I see the game script favoring McKinnon much more in this one, with Atlanta airing it out and them potentially having to keep up. So I think McKinnon would have the more effective game.
Yeah, and Latavius Murray, I was looking back at it, and it looks like he does most of his damage through between the tackles, and that's where a lot of these this interior defense of the Atlanta Falcons are able to stop the run. The Falcons.
I had to do it. Sorry.
That's okay. All right. But so I think they're going to be able to stop Latavius Murray this week, and so I think they'll beat him through the air with McKinnon instead.
And that's why we're going to say, sit him. You looked like you wanted to say start him.
I had a half second. Like every time you say it, and every time you get ready to say, I gotta reset and be like, okay, what is this? It's a sit him.
But we got it this week.
Sit that man.
That's not a tight end though. What are you doing?
I know. Yeah, this is coming.
It'll be back later.
Anyways,
moving on. Wide receiver position. Start of the week. Bob, give it to me.
Start of the week. Wide receiver. We're gonna go Davante Adams.
Why?
Green Bay Packers, because Hundley, now we have some weeks, like consistent weeks that we can kind of get a trend going with Hundley, and this trend is saying that Adams is Hundley's first, second, and third option in this offense. He is forcing the ball, forcing targets to Davante Adams, who, he's being a great receiver by catching him, even when he's trying to force it in there. Mm-hmm. So I like Davante Adams this week against Bucs defense that has been terrible this year.
Sorry, I saw you wanted to get in that second bullet point, but...
I know.
You sure?
No, I'm good. It'll come next when we talk about our sit of the week.
Okay. But Davante Adams against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay's defense has been constantly at the bottom of the league for the past few seasons and has continued to stay there this year as well. Last week, they got absolutely shredded by Julio. I think we just found a new way to say his name.
Julio?
We got Julio, we got Julio, and we got Julio.
Okay.
So they were shredded by Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu for over 300 yards, and that's not even counting any other player on the Atlanta offense.
Pretty bad.
Davante Adams fits right in between those two in terms of talent and production, so he should see plenty of opportunities and make the most of them in this week's great matchup. And that's why we're going to say, start him. Moving on to our wide receiver sit of the week, we have T.Y. Hilton at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yep, they didn't have the best game last week.
No, it was a tough one.
But it's still the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it's still a very tough matchup.
Yeah.
Hilton is an unmistakable talent, but sadly he has been anything but this season. Jacoby Brissett has been a serviceable addition to the Colts while Andrew Luck has been shelved for the season, but the main problem lies in the offensive line struggles. And being as T.Y. is known for his really quick speed and deep threat ability, many of his routes that he runs don't get the time they need to develop, making him quite a volatile asset this year.
Yeah, and T.Y. has been so hot and cold this year. Big game. He's had a couple big games. I'll give him that. But outside of that, when he doesn't have a good week, he doesn't have a good week. It's terrible. I mean, I'm speaking from experience, but we all know that. Especially when we look at the Jaguars' defense, Tashawn Gibson, one of their safeties, when this is my second bullet point.
This is his second bullet point. His face just lit up.
Yeah,
he's so excited.
I am excited to share the stats with the group, with the league. So here it is, guys. Tashawn Gibson, when he's ranked the third safety in the league when targeted against, he's only allowed a passer rating of 38, which is considerably low. So whenever they're targeting a wide receiver that he's guarding, he's at the top of the league when in terms of shutting it down.
And for all those reasons,
all of them, all those three bullet points,
we're gonna say sit him. Moving on to the tight end position.
Damn tight ends.
There we go. We decided, and this was a tougher pick for us, but ultimately we just had to go with the fan favorite.
Yeah.
And
Good friend of the show.
Good friend of the show. Yeah, he said he wanted to come on later in the season. We'll see if we can fit him in the schedule.
He's a busy guy.
Kathy has to line that up, and I don't know what she's doing. But our tight end start of the week, Bob,
It's Jason Witten,
verse.
the Redskins.
There you go.
I had to peek down.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with a quick peek.
It's all good. Okay, so the deal with Jason Witten this week, he's gone up against the Redskins this year already and didn't have the best game.
No.
But there was a different situation back then.
Redemption.
Yeah, I think this week with not having Zeke, like a formidable running game with Zeke and Dez, who has been pretty much absent all year. He hasn't really had the targets, or he hasn't really been able to create separation against the secondary. So I think if Dak can just rely on Jason Witten to get open against the Redskins defense that's not great against the tight end, I think Jason Witten can get it done this week.
Yeah, kind of like you had mentioned, Witten has a fairly decent matchup. It's not the best, but it's certainly not the worst. And it's against that on-again, off-again Washington Redskins defense. You're never quite sure which one's going to show up on game day. And these are division rivals that know each other quite well. And lucky for Prescott, he has his security in Jason Witten. So his security blanket in Jason Witten. So hopefully we'll see some checkdowns, or Witten, with all his experience and talent, working underneath to get open to provide an outlet for Prescott, since that running game hasn't really done much since Zeke's suspension.
It's tough, yeah.
So that's why we're going to say
Start him. I like how we just bash the Dallas offense to make sure that Jason Witten's our start of the week. And, I do believe in that.
I mean,
start,
I don't want to say we have alternative motives when we're up here. We're really, you guys think we're giving good advice. Hey, who should we start? Who should we sit?
No.
We just look at who we play each week, and we try and get you guys to start your worst players and
Absolutely.
sit your studs.
Yeah.
So if you guys haven't caught on yet, there it is. It's out in the open. And if you don't get it after this, we know you don't watch the show, so we don't care.
That's right. Moving on
To
the sit of the week at the tight end position.
We have, that was nice. I think that might be the first official time
That I started it.
you started
I
it
did.
all.
I was
and
smooth, Larry.
I loved it.
Thanks.
Take some weight off the shoulders. Look at,
Yeah, you're
so
carrying
loose.
the team here. You all right?
Yeah.
Need a back rub?
Well, that's why we got these supports here.
Okay.
But like Bob had mentioned, our tight end, sit of the week, Tyler Kroft versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kroft is facing a tough matchup, and again, this is another divisional matchup that always plays as a grinded out kind of game. It's tough in the trenches, dirty work. That doesn't mean it's always low scoring, but the big plays that do happen are very hard to come by. And Kroft has actually filled in quite nicely since Eifert went down for the season, but I wouldn't be expecting too much volume this week because Pittsburgh has the potential to keep your offense off the field, and then when they are, shut down and keep you from sustaining any drives. So it makes him dependent on a touchdown, which he could get, but it's just a roll of the dice this week.
Well, speaking on that note, the Steelers defense in the past 4 weeks haven't allowed a touchdown to the tight end. So,
Ew,
so
it's almost like we wrote this right before we came up on the show.
No, we just have good chemistry. Well, let's make them think that. But yes, if he's going to be relying on a touchdown, and the Steelers in the past 4 weeks haven't really allowed a touchdown to the tight end position, it's going to make it really hard. The Steelers have also only allowed 11 receptions to the tight end position over 4 weeks, so they're really shutting it down against the tight end recently. So I don't like Tyler Kroft this week, so that's why we say
sit him. Moving on to the kicker position.
Yeah, it's my
Bob,
kicker.
Who is our start of the week?
Our start of the week, we had him on earlier in the last couple of weeks, or so we had him on as the sit.
I think he's been on here twice.
Yeah. Both sits, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but this week, he's getting the start. Brandon McManus. Shout out, Matt.
And David.
Yes,
We
and
didn't
David.
forget you.
Oh, yeah, he's in the camera. That's right. Anyways, okay, so they're in Miami. Weather should be good. McManus has been decent this year. I like him.
And that's why we're going to say
Start
him. If that wasn't a glowing
Hey,
endorsement,
I kept that to one bullet point.
yeah, you did. So feel confident firing up McManus this week. Now on the other side of the ball, or actually the same side of the ball because it's the same position, but
Just
should be on your bench.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I can pronounce this right. Our sit of the week at the kicker position is Giorgio Tavascio versus the New York Giants.
Yeah, I like it.
Yep. Don't start him. Sit him.
Okay.
No. Giorgio started the season out hot, but as the Raiders have faded, so have his opportunities. He still has the leg and accuracy to score, but with the Giants playing much tougher as of late, he might not see the opportunities if the Raiders struggle to move the chains. So that's why we're going to say
Sit him.
All right, moving
Start.
on
What do you got, Kev?
to the defense special teams
Special teams.
start of the week.
Don't forget that special teams.
We are going to go with the Los Angeles, quote unquote, not San Diego, Chargers versus the Cleveland Browns.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, it was. Well, because I always mess up, so I had to make sure I
Yeah, you nailed
really
it this
read
time.
it.
You nailed it
I
this
have
time.
it highlighted and everything. You guys can't see that, but we know.
Yeah.
So the Chargers have been the hottest defense in fantasy football the past 2 weeks and maybe even 3. The pass rush of combination of Ingram and Bosa looks unstoppable, getting sack after sack and QB pressures, and the amount of turnovers they're forcing in their secondary are elevating them to almost elite status. Add in the fact that they're playing the turnover-prone Browns at home this week, and I have a feeling that if you roll this D out there, you won't be disappointed. And that's why we're going to say, start them.
Sit of the week for the defensive position and special teams.
That's right.
We're going to go with the Bills defense going up against the Patriots. The Patriots are doing Patriot things this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are exploiting defenses at their weak points. So although I think the Bills defense overall has been great this year, I think Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, I think they just know how to kind of beat good defenses. And I think, with their deep threat in Brandon Cooks and their, monster red zone target Gronkowski, I think it's going to be a lot for the Bills to handle, and so I don't think they're going to put up, the numbers that you would expect from them this year, and that's why we say
Sit them.
Well,
All right.
Yeah,
Hey, we blew through that.
not too bad.
Not overly quick because it was still around 16 minutes, but it wasn't the usual 20, so we're getting better. But that about does it for this week's edition of the Boys Night Fantasy Football League Network, or the BNFFLN. Thanks, and good luck in your matchups this week. Bob?
Weave?
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Cut it there.
I think that was pretty good.
Yeah,
Chris
good
was
job, guys.
he was killing it with
Everybody
the
on
slow
set,
pan.
I love it.
I just kind of wanted to keep talking because he was matching it up.
Crushing.
Perfect.
That felt good. That felt good.